We also know that to adopt alternative energy sources, Africa and developing countries must have greater access to funds. So it's been a British initiative to create what has been called the Climate Investment Funds at the World Bank. We agreed measures at the G8 which will provide over $120 billion in public and private finance for alternative energy and other environmental investments. This is $117 billion through the existing Clean Energy Investment Framework, $6 billion of new funding through the new Climate Investment Funds, a huge new global investment fund of more than $100 billion for tackling climate change and encouraging developing countries to move to alternatives to fossil fuels. Mr. Speaker, with rising food prices having an impact at home and abroad, particularly for the poorest, the need for coordinated global action is also clear. So the G8 agreed to invest over $10 billion to meet the short-term humanitarian needs arising from famines, including increases in food aid, but we also agreed to improve food security and measures for agricultural productivity over the longer term. Now, one major element in reducing food prices, as well as generating wider global benefits, will be a successful outcome to the Doha trade round, where lowering trade-distorting subsidies and import restrictions could increase the global GDP by as much as €120 billion a year by 2015. The Doha trade round is primarily a development round, which will benefit the poorest countries most. But if we are to break the year-long deadlock in negotiations, the upcoming ministerial meeting of the World Trade Organization on July the 21st will be critical. It is a make-or-break meeting for a trade deal, and I discussed the importance of this at the summit with all its participants, including President Bush, the Presidents of Brazil and South Africa, and the Prime Minister of India. We agreed that the biggest signal we could send that the present challenges must not be an excuse for a renewed bout of protectionism was signing that World Trade Deal. I hope all sections of this House will agree that all countries should show the resolution to achieve the breakthrough we want and need. To support the deal, the G8 also reiterated a commitment to invest $4 billion in aid for trade to help the poorest countries take advantage of new trading opportunities. Mr. Speaker, as part of action this year on the Millennium Development Goals, the G8 also signed up to new action to meet goals on health and also reaffirmed commitments made at Gleneagles to provide $25 billion in aid to Africa and $50 billion globally by 2010, as well as establishing universal access to treatment for AIDS. How the world achieves further major advances in the alleviation of poverty, disease and illiteracy is the subject of the UN Millennium Summit convened by the UN Secretary-General for September the 25th. And I call on all countries to do what is necessary to meet the promises that they made on the Millennium Development Goals. My aim at the summit was to turn generalised commitments that were not time-specific into concrete action and to delivery to address poverty, disease and illiteracy. We agreed that over the next 5 years, we'd deliver the commitment of $60 billion to tackle infectious diseases and strengthen health in Africa and developing countries. Some other countries will provide additional resources for healthcare systems, including our own. We also agreed to help fund in 36 African countries a target of 2.3 health workers per 1,000 people, and that would mean in total an additional 1.5 million new doctors, nurses or health workers, including a major advance in the number of skilled midwives so that women no longer have to die when unaided during childbirth. The G8 also committed to finance by 2010 100 million bed nets for the prevention of malaria. This could save 600,000 lives. $1 billion of new funding for the Education Fast Track initiative will immediately help a further 10 million children go to school. And during the summit, I had a number of key bilateral meetings with other leaders on Millennium Development Goal issues and other issues as well. This included a meeting with the new president of Russia, where we agreed on coordinated international action on Iran and the Middle East peace process, but I raised in detail all the major issues that exist between our two countries, our position on the Litvenko case, the treatment of the British Council, and the withdrawal of visas for BP employees. Mr. Speaker, the G8 also agreed that in a world of global financial flows, it is essential that immediate action be taken to tackle the impact of financial instability. Action at home should be accompanied internationally by clearer standards for valuation of assets, changes in the role and use of credit rating agencies, better management of liquidity, and more general, there was an agreement on the need for concerted global action to reform the International Monetary Fund. There was agreement that the International Monetary Fund should become a better early warning system for the world economy. And there was a wider agreement that the international institutions set up in the 1940s were now in need of fundamental reform to ensure they are fit to meet these new challenges of the 21st century. And further work will be done over the coming year to produce proposals for the reform and renewal. So, Mr. Speaker, just as on Zimbabwe, where we have now seen the growth of an international coalition for change, there is growing agreement around the world on the need for and real progress now in detailed collaborative actions on energy